I think we should talk about what happened last year, what's going to happen next year on these gun control bills. Um, I think for everybody who's going to listen to this, I think we had a wonderful year last year. I don't know what you guys think about that, because this is what happened. It was fantastic. You know, we saw
Yeah,
what
I mean, you
happened.
wouldn't think that, right? If you think back to like a year ago right now, would you have thought that a year from then you would be thinking we had a wonderful year last year?
Well,
Yes,
just,
I thought that.
well, to some degree, when it comes to the Second Amendment, to some degree, we had the best of both worlds, right? We had Joe Biden gets into office, wants to pass everything, gets boot stomped by gun owners. And what happens? All these states all across America go, you know what? Screw you, Joe. You give a great big middle finger, and they pass pro-gun bill after pro-gun bill after pro-gun bill all across the country. Big expansions of the Second Amendment.
The kind of expansions they could have made a hell of a long time ago. They just finally
Well,
found
and
the
yeah,
walls because
that they should
Joe
have made a
Biden
long
made
time
them
ago.
all of a sudden decide to act like Republicans again. But that's always happened that way. It was the same thing when Obama first got in office. All these red states were they were made red again. They were made red
That's
again.
a great point. In fact, Aaron, I think when you and I first started doing gun politics, a year or two before these whippersnappers over here,
We're born.
there was two constitutional carry states, Vermont and Alaska.
Yeah.
That was it.
Yeah.
And now we're at 21. Ohio's about to become 22. So yeah, and a lot of that we can lay right at the feet of the hard work and mobilization that was done under President Obama and now under President Biden or Resident Biden.
Yeah.
Sorry.
President.
Correct me though, when Obama was elected and the states went back to red, there wasn't a whole lot of pro-gun legislation passed in the states though.
Exactly. A lot of people just like. I mean, I'm not as. It's just not as aggressive. It's not as aggressive as it is under.
They were doing. I mean, at that time, there were still. I mean, there were still fights going on for shall issue. I mean, that's how long ago that we were in the gun rights community at that time. Iowa was not shall issue. Wisconsin was not shall issue. There was still the final phase, if you will, of the shall issue fight was still happening. So it took some time when shall issue became the established de facto for all red states pretty much to then begin to make the next push, which is what we began to do on day one with Iowa gun owners. Was we don't want shall issue, we want constitutional carry. And so I think, you know, under Obama, a lot of the progress was on. I mean, the progress is scaled by whatever the political discourse of the day was, right? And there wasn't a lot of discourse in 2008, 2009 about constitutional carry. So when we started doing it in Iowa, like you said, Chris, two states, people thought that we had, three eyes when we talked about having no permits.
I think they'll probably have. I think that they might even think we have four eyes. After we reveal the next phase of gun rights legislation that we will begin to push after we get SEPA on the books. But I think, and I think this is what we need to start pushing for, the gun rights community as a whole. We need to start pushing so that not only do the states have constitutional carry, but it's time that the states that have it start pushing farther past that and deregulating the second, the carrying of firearms altogether, like Vermont. We always called Vermont a constitutional carry state. Technically, under today's standards, that's just not true. They've just never regulated the carrying of firearms in that state. I think that's a great thing for the states that have passed constitutional carry, who haven't done anything for a while for gun owners. I don't know what, and that might trigger some lefties, but wouldn't that in and of itself be a good reason to push?
We know that all this stuff does is makes people safer. It just does. It just does. I mean, I live just south of Minneapolis, and every single day the city's just getting blown to pieces. There's criminals, there's gangs. I mean, there are full-blown gangs with war factions up there mowing each other down in the streets. Nobody has permits.
Are you telling me those Minnesota boys are becoming gang members?
There's not much Minnesotan about him, I can tell you that. Recently acquired Minnesota.
Like little miniature Kent Herbecks running around in these gangs with these like flags hanging out and their pants down around their ankles and stuff like that, like trying to mow each other. No, the only mowing I see in Minnesota is like goose season. Boy, do they take a hammer to them up there.
A little Kent Herbeck mowing them down. Don't you know?
Kent Herbeck had
But no, I mean, what Chris said is, I think was what you said is entirely true. This would lessen crime. This would make guns more readily available for great people, great law-abiding people. And when he brought up, when we were just talking about back in the old days, never forget that this entire process, we've all seen this, and you just reminded me of this. The NRA opposed constitutional carry all across America. They hated Vermont style carry, which we called constitutional carry. They opposed shall issue all across the place. The NRA has been way further to the left on all of these issues for decades. And it was only when the people drug them over to the right that they finally acquiesced right as bills are about to be passed in places like Ohio and Iowa and Missouri. Then the NRA goes, well, you know what? We can't let a pro-gun bill pass and not have us support it.
Right.
Because then we can't claim credit for it. And so who the hell wants a pro-gun organization that always has to be forced to do the right thing by their own membership?
It's pathetic.
It's some garbage. And so remember that it's, I don't know, it's the people who are pushing this forward, the American Firearms Association, all of our state affiliates that we work with all across the country are the ones pushing this entire conversation to the right and opening up Second Amendment firearms freedoms all across America.
Because it wasn't just it's not just the NRA, and I know you know this, Ben, but it's not just the NRA that has been slow to jump on board any of this stuff or deliberately sabotaging the effort to pass these major gun bills. It's the state affiliates. It's the Buckeye Firearms Associations. It's the Minnesota Gun Owners Caucus. It's the Iowa Firearms Coalition. It's all these dip dunks, Georgia Carry. These people have been deliberately blocking and saying, no, we don't want freedom. We like a little bit of chains. Let's just not do this. Let's do this other bullshit over here. And because of that, I mean, what have we all, you've seen it. We've all seen it. All the state legislatures and legislators themselves, they take that and they latch onto that and they say, you know what, as long as we've got cover, we're going to do as little as we possibly can for as long as we can.
Well, that to me is like, I mean, look, the job for these state groups, the job for Iowa gun owners, the New York State Firearms Association, all these groups is to pass legislation and to expose anti-gunners in both parties. But, half the job in doing that is to light a fire under gun owners also, and let them realize that we have a God-given right to these things. And so a lot of times I think for a lot of good gun owners, they're just trying to pay the damn mortgage bill and feed the kids and just live their life. And so, they go to the forums on the weekend, they hear from politicians who talk about guns. And in the old days, that was enough. And a lot of those guys would kind of take that and they'd hear about that from, Representative Joe Smith, and they'd say, well, he's fighting for me. But I think what we've really seen over the last 10 years, and certainly this year in 2021, was just an explosion of distrust amongst gun owners for politicians in both parties. And I think Trump began that in a major way. He showed the whole world that the swamp is everywhere. It's by no means just the radical left.
Yeah.
And that's been the biggest, I think, advancement for gun politics over these years. I mean, we can and we do nuance over the fine points on policy, on getting the right version of constitutional carry, the right version of SAPA, the right version of stand your ground law. But those things happen fast once there's more or less a gun cocked to the political head of the legislature and saying, we're not falling for your shit anymore. We demand passage of X. And it's just that it's that constant, banging the drum and showing people this is what we need to demand from the politicians. So sure, they come along in 2021 and now they're the big man on campus. And, Brian Kemp is going to try to be the big man on campus in 2022. And they're all of a
Maybe he
sudden
will
now,
be.
yeah, maybe he will be. But they're being pushed. And that I think is the big thing. It's like this is happening because gun owners have become relentless, and we just don't trust party affiliation anymore, and that needs to continue into 2022.
Yes, a huge change in the mind of American gun owners over the last how many years? Not just since Biden. Guns and babies, right? Guns and babies are one of the two biggest issues, maybe two of the biggest issues in all of conservative right-wing politics. And it's
definitely for single issue voters. Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. It's the two things that get screwed the most. Gun owners have been getting screwed all across America, not just, at the federal level for decades. And for a long time.
Nearly as bad as the pro-lifers.
Nearly. And for years, they put up with it. They just put up with it. Like, well, it is what it is. Well, we'll get what we're going to get. But no,
it could be much worse. We could have Democrats in there that aren't doing crap for us too.
Well, it's what I told the stupid former Senate Majority Leader in Minnesota. His name was Paul Gazelka. He thinks he's going to be governor. I met with him and he goes, and I said, you need to pass some pro-gun bills here. I said, you got to pass them. You are in the majority in the Senate. You have a Republican majority. Pass some pro-gun bills so we can beat on the Democrats over here in the House. And he goes, what, you think things would be any better under the Democrats? I said, well, the Democrats in Minnesota are the ones who passed the suppressor law, right? They're the ones who passed capital carry.
That's what happened in Iowa.
Democrats who passed all these pro-gun bills in Minnesota. The last pro-gun bills that were passed under Democrats. So sometimes it takes those odds, those button heads out there to get some stuff done. And gun owners have figured that out too and realize that just because you have Republicans in charge doesn't mean things are going to be honky-dory. And in fact, that often means you're going to get screwed over.
Well, it's because this always existed under an old dynamic where all there was the NRA. And I swear to God, if I could sit back and just be a fly on the wall back in their offices, back in the, I don't know, mid 2000s, well, they decided intentionally, you know what, we're going to be swampish. We're going to go just a little bit and not too much. We don't want to go too far and pass too many bills. We don't want to be too extreme because after all, we just don't actually believe that. I mean, if they had known then that inaction and that betrayal was going to spawn massive state level organizations like the ones that we run and had the chance to work for, and that those state groups would just go all over the country and just show them for being the frauds that they were, I don't know. Maybe they would have decided to have some more gumption back in the day, but they sat back and enabled all of this. And so now they shouldn't be surprised when the states stand up and say, bullshit. If you're not going to do it, we're going to, because there's nothing that a gun owner in, pick a state, Bethany, Missouri, there's nothing that a gun owner in Missouri hates more than having some national group put their hand out right into their pocket and take out that $100, and then you don't do a damn thing for us.
Right.
And that's what happened. And so thank God,
i.e.
state groups just exploded over the last 10 years.
i.e. talk to the gun owners in California, talk to the gun owners in New York until New York State Firearms Association came along, talk to the gun owners in Indiana, talk to the gun owners in Oregon, talk to the gun owners in Washington State. These people have been dedicated and deliberate in their support for this organization, but the NRA betrayed that trust when they didn't come to their defense and they didn't go to absolute political war. And that's what we've always, that's what we Door brothers here have always understood, that we are in a culture war here with the left. It's not just some gentleman's mental discussion, theoretical discussion about, well, I think we should be able to do this, and I think we should this isn't Britain. This isn't that kind of bullcrap. This is life or death, a zero-sum game. Either we win and get to be free, or they win and get to murder people by the millions, because that's what tyrannical governments do. And
You know what's also interesting is going back to the the types of bills, as Aaron talked about when IGO got started. Everyone else was still trying to get just shall issue permits, and it was no all the way constitutional carry. The bills were more aggressive, but even since then, the Democrats' bills have become way more aggressive.
Yeah.
They have ramped up their rhetoric. They have come out with all new sick and twisted ways to force this agenda because they realize there is pushback, and they thought that they could get it by just going along nice and slow year after year, little bit, little bit, little bit, and suddenly they hit a wall, a beautiful
Nice.
beautiful wall, and they've had to ramp it up tremendously because they know that this is kind of a last ditch effort to claw out anything they can to use against us. Red flag laws is new. We always knew about the AW bans, universal background checks, but now they're hiding it in all sorts of different bills. It's crazy to see how ramped up and aggressive they are now.
well, I mean, in many
versus
ways, it's because
2008.
like we finally stopped. We finally stopped this whole
Gentleman's
idea that
game.
this is just a gentleman's sport here. We
Yep.
forced them out into the open by us demanding all of our rights. We're pulling back the veneer that they've always hidden behind, where they claim to be on the side of common sense, where they always claimed, well, we support the Second Amendment. All we're trying to do is get some common sense Second Amendment obliteration legislation on the books. You see, I mean, that's the beauty about what Trump kind of showed everybody as possible, and that's the beauty about the way these organizations are run is simply by drawing the line, by going all the way to full freedom with no apologies. We force the Democrats out into the open. We force the left out into the open. They're exposed for what they really are, and that is a huge mobilization factor in getting people off the bleachers and down onto the court.
Are you giving away like trade secrets here? I mean, are we openly acknowledging the fact that for all those schleps in these state capitals who thought that we just like to use extreme political violence, not meaning like IRA style Patriot Games car bombing, but like political
Even though
tactics
that was one of the best movies ever, Patriot Games,
But-
Tom Clancy. Oh my goodness.
But it's almost like maybe, just maybe, we had thought all this stuff through at one point and decided that the best way to advance the fight for gun rights was to go to war against the Republican moderates in red states and force them to move to the right. It's almost like that tactic has paid dividends. And I don't know. I'm not sure I want folks to know that as far as the politicians. I kind of like them thinking they were just a bunch of knuckle dragging gun nuts that got too many ARs stuffed away in a
the
gun
Door
safe
brothers
somewhere.
know very well that extremes dictate the middle.
Exactly.
And if you don't like it,
every time, what blows
ahead.
me away, we're getting ready for session now in like all these freaking states. I'm talking to bill sponsors every day in all these states. And every time one of those guys or gals has this like eureka moment, they're like, oh, like you guys scripted all of this. Like the intention was always to push all the way over, and then we would start passing peripheral bills. Yeah. I mean, it'd be easier in some ways to say, no, we just hate every politician in the country for the most part. There's exceptions, and we like to just make your lives miserable. But there's also a major tactical play here, and Brian Kemp may end up being the primo example of that in 2022. I mean, this guy. I mean, Trump hates him. Half the conservatives or more in Georgia hate him. So what do? We start lobbing these bombs, digital ads after ad after ad all fall. And some people are like, well, you can't get mad at Republicans. Well, whatever. Now we've got David Perdue, Trump endorsed David Perdue saying, if I become your next governor, we're going to pass constitutional carry. And suddenly, lo and behold, after we've beat on him nonstop, this is the hottest issue in Georgia. And now Kemp comes out and says, as your governor, we're going to make constitutional carry happen next year. I mean, it's almost like this was scripted somewhere. So.
It's like we knew. And Chris, you just said this a minute ago about sort of unraveling all of this stuff. The reality is, if none of this stuff had been done, if we hadn't done it this way for all these years, I mean, look what it took for Australia to lose everything. It
Yeah.
took one shooting, and all the common sense politicians came out and they're like, we got to give all the guns away. Take all the guns. We're going to run them over with these friggin' big
Bulldozers.
chunks of iron. We're gonna smash them all to pieces. And now all of a sudden, looking back, everybody in Australia is sitting here going, like,
Yeah.
what the hell did we do? What did we do?
Need a passport.
If we allowed this, if gun owners allowed this sort of moderate approach to the Second Amendment to continue indefinitely, yeah, we would have been one shooting. And it's what the Democrats tried to do. It's what the left and the right tried to do after Sandy Hook. They're like, here's our Australia moment. Now we can ban everything and annihilate the Second Amendment. I think that the number one thing gun owners can do every day is to not trust the Democrats, not trust the Republicans, not trust the NRA. Always be pushing, always be asking questions and demanding the most, from these organizations. That's from the politicians, these organizations. That's what I think.
I know we've all talked about Australia quite a bit. We share the web links, the news stories coming out of Australia to each other all the time. Like this is exactly what we've been talking about our entire lives. But just on Christmas Day, there was a new family that came to our church. The husband finally got a job out of Canada, and he's moved down here with his 4 children and his wife, and they've got green cards. They're going to be here for like 7 years or whatnot minimum, try and get apply for citizenship in a year. But Australia is a long boat ride or plane ride away. This guy drove down here in like 11 hours from Canada, and he had all sorts of questions about guns because he's never got to shoot one. He's like, what blows my mind is like something is like, I was reading your Constitution before I came down here.
Hey.
Right.
That's dang. Politicians don't even like to do that here in America.
Like what's amazing is that it's written into the Constitution that these are inalienable God-given rights. Now, that sounds like a t-shirt, placard, NRA can use it. People use it all the time, but he was dead serious. He was dead serious. It's like, that's an inalienable right for you guys down here. I'm like, yeah, except for everybody in Chicago, New York City, Los Angeles, and so on and so forth. It's like, but in Canada, it's not. The law, and I'm going to paraphrase here, is it's what best is interpreted by the judge in the courts that best serves the public. It's like, it is most open-ended constitution, or whatever they want to call it in Canada. He's like, it can be abused at any time. It can any law can be stripped away from us. So he's like, so that's how, like, I'm allowed to own a hunting rifle and not much else or anything else. He's like, that's how there's forced lockdown still going on in Canada. I'm not kidding. I'm not making this up. This guy looked me in the eyes and said, they can't lock you down anymore, can they? Because they know you have more guns.
That's what I was going to say. I'm like, he's definitely approaching that from a uniquely Canadian experience or approach, because me as an American, I hear that and I hear that he's allowed to own a gun because whatever. And I'm thinking to myself, well, he should try being like an American up there, and they should all just get together and say, yeah, nah. When in the course of my events here, suckers, we're going to change this now, and y'all are booted out.
Thomas Jefferson and John Adams, were very clear when they were writing the Declaration that even though we were doing it for this patch of land, right, called the United States of America, may she live forever, they made it very clear that these were the laws of nature, of God, for all people everywhere. So if you're getting your arms chopped off in the Sudan, you have as much a right to waste that person who's coming after you and your family as we do in America when you come and try to inflict your tyranny and rob my family and attack my wife and my kids. And in Canada, you have the same thing. These are the laws of nature set down by God. They apply to all people everywhere. And that, I mean, that's why people like the French loved us back in those days. You know, that
Yes.
we were the first nation in America to set down these inalienable rights that apply to all people everywhere. It's glorious, and I'm
And it
happy
is
to hear it's
lawful and it is just.
yes, it's good, it's righteous, is what it is.
Well,
Yep.
it's that attitude that is what's kept this country as free as it is, and everybody knows that in DC. They're trying their damnedest to crush. I mean, guns is going to be taken away. Will be taken away when the spirit, of gun owners are conquered, and they've been trying. There's no other country like this on earth. There never has been, and that's what you're seeing. You see these horrible lockdowns of people in camps in Australia. You mentioned, well, just deal with that. Well, from a lot of these people, they, like, there's just not a lot of heritage of freedom that flows through their veins. Their great grandfathers didn't lead the charge against the redcoats, and I mean, it's that spirit, it's that history of hatred for tyranny, defiance of tyranny,
Total rebellion.
That's what Biden and his handlers, more importantly, want to crush. And I'm going to get off of the gun issue for a moment, but man, when they sit there and force us all to stay home and then try to bribe us all with our own money again in the form of all these payments,
our
and
grandkids' money.
Fair enough. But the point is that what they're trying to do is make the American, freedom, that spirit of American freedom and that hatred of tyranny be a little easier, pill to swallow. And if we ever, as gun owners, lose that
that's why we're always
hatred,
we're always like, especially for these organizations that we all work for. Well, we're always like, if you're a doomer or if you're a FUD, get the hell out of here.
Yeah.
That kind of cancerous mentality where you don't cherish freedom and liberty, where the chains of slavery, you're okay with that. Get out of here. Like, what was his name? Sam Adams, I think it was. He said, may the chains of slavery crush you, and posterity forget that you are our countrymen. You don't deserve the name American if you believe that way. And so we boot him out.
Yeah.
Go join the NRA.
There's always an NRA group somewhere that'll take you.
You bet you. Go to Buckeye Firearms Association.
We want your grandkids.
Exactly.
Grandkids. Because your grandkids know a hell of a lot more about the stakes of things today than what you do for many people. And I remember how many hundreds of gun shows that we worked, Chris, in Iowa when we first got going with Iowa gun owners back in 2009, Council Bluffs and Waterloo and Mason City and Sioux City, Cedar Rapids,
Council
and
Bluffs.
Maquoketa and Davenport, and how many times. And back then, Iowa didn't have, Iowa only passed constitutional carry this year. But at that time, the idea of constitutional carry was perhaps even more foreign, certainly. How many times you have some guy come by 60, 70, 80 years old, and he would just we'd say, help us pass constitutional carry, sign a petition, take a stand. We didn't even want his money. We just wanted him to sign a petition, so his own state rep would know this is where I stand when it comes to freedom. How many times they would turn up their nose and say, I've already got my guns. I already got mine.
Or the other ones who are like, I don't know why you guys all think you need those black rifles, those assault rifles anyway.
What's wrong with going through a permit process?
What's wrong with a Remington 870 shotgun? Why you guys think you need more than that means you're just trying to prove something.
Or the others who always go, I'm gonna stay under the radar. I don't sign my name to nothing. Nothing.
Yeah.
I don't put my name on
as
paper.
they're surfing Facebook.
Like you're under a radar.
and as we always say, it's like, well, it's a damn good thing our founding fathers weren't so fearful, because they put their names on pieces of paper hanging right here over my shoulder that cost them far more than they'll ever cost you walking through your gun show in Council Bluffs, Iowa.
Yeah, believe me, the federal government ain't looking for you trash ball.
But that was I guess I was gonna finish that thought by saying how many times the rage of watching that schlep walk away was assuaged when his grandson would come by 2 minutes later, Grandpa's an aisle away in the gun show, right? And then grandson comes over and says, Grandpa just doesn't get it, man. He just doesn't get it.
Yep.
And the point, I mean, there's all kinds of patriotic people out there.
And there's all kinds of patriotic
70,
grandpas
90,
out there.
100-year-old people who are heavily involved in the work of the American Firearms Association, all of our state groups. These people are the best of the best as individuals, but there's just so many people as a class entity or as a larger group that too much trust in politicians, too much trust in parties, too much trust in organizations, and that trust is what damn near derailed
unearned
the fight for gun rights. And thankfully, like I said, there's just so much new energy in this battle. And I mean, so 13 years ago, 2 states. Constitutional carry 21. I mean, I'm not a math major.
So we've seen this, this state resurgence on passing gun bills. What about at the federal level? What are we getting? Anybody seeing anything out there?
We're getting phony Joni.
Good gosh.
Is it time for Joni? Man.
Yeah.
I mean, you know her. I mean, you and I both know her personally, but not the smartest, not the sharpest knife in the drawer, not the brightest bulb in the ceiling when she was a state senator. And I just got to sit there and think to myself, if I'm Chuck Schumer, I mean, I wish I had a printout. Maybe I do somewhere of that press release from Feinstein. I did have it from last week, the presser where it's like Durbin and Feinstein with Ernst and Murkowski to unveil massive gun control bill. If I'm Chuck Schumer, I'm just sitting back there in my office, just slapping my hip and look at how stupid these Republicans are, that they actually got phony Joni Ernst to not just support it on the floor, but to joint sponsor a massive gun control bill. It's just,
by the way,
I want to know her chief. Maybe you know this, Aaron, but what kind of chief of staff lets their boss do something so stupid as in 2020 at the ass end of 2021 announce that you're going to be joining with the Democrats on the cusp of a time when it looks very likely that Republicans are going to take back both the U.S. House and likely the U.S. Senate. What kind of chief of staff lets their boss go out there and sit down at a table with Dick Durbin, and who's the other one?
Dianne Feinstein.
Dianne Feinstein.
And it's only
negotiating on gun control.
Of staff who knows that Ernst just won election, last year. She's got 5 years to go. This is how it always works. They're not going to have a Chuck Grassley do this. They're not going to have somebody who's up for election this, in 2022 do it. No, they bring up, somebody who won last year, who's got 5 years left in a 6-year ride. And they say, hey, Joni, can you help us push the Violence Against Women Act?
Right.
It's a gun control bill, but no one's going to know that because we're going to call it the Violence Against Women Act. So after all, how could anybody, if anybody opposes it, they're wife beaters. It's just, that's how they approach her. And, phony Joni is like, she strips off those bread bags off her feet and she runs down the hall and jumps into Dianne's office and says, sign my name.
So dumb. And Alex, I don't know if you know this or not, but the name Phony Joni wasn't a name that was thought up here in 2021. That was a name that was given to her to people who had to work with her, but didn't want to call her that right to her face in the Iowa Senate as I sat one row back and 2 seats to the left of her. On the Iowa Senate floor. You think of a grocery bag floating in the wind, and that's kind of that's like the moral compass.
I thought you were going to say bread bag. I thought you were going to say bread bag floating.
Well, I should have.
I'm not sure if you guys know this.
I'm beginning to suspect. Yeah, I'm beginning to suspect that whole campaign ad of hers about the bread bags is a lie because she also said in that ad that she was going to go to Washington, D.C. and make them squeal, and she never did anything other than make them squeal with delight.
Chuck Schumer's squealing. He is.
Yeah, exactly.
So
I don't know what ad you guys are talking about, but I want to.
Man, dude, she won her race telling Iowans that she castrated hogs as she grew up on the family farm.
And that she was going to go to D.C. and make them squeal there too.
Paring knife in her hand, basically saying, "I'm going to go to D.C. and make them squeal." And she talked about how she had the bread bags in her boots.
So instead she's going to DC to castrate the Second Amendment. Good job,
making
Phony.
gun
Yeah,
owners
good job,
squeal.
Phony.
Even worse still, like this, she goes back a long ways. But do y'all remember when she did a spin class with Kirsten Gillibrand from New York? Chuck Schumer's counterpart?
She's besties with the worst people in DC.
Okay, maybe there's a bill worth working on together or something. I don't know if there is one.
What?
But
no, not ever.
Not, sorry. But I sure wouldn't go to a spin class with my enemy who's trying to kill me. Why would I go?
Well, you know what? I might. Accidents. I mean, I'm not the most.
So here, for me, it boils down to this. It's like, I despise people who are not true believers.
Yep.
Activists, politicians, media personalities, pastors, whatever. If you are not a true believer in the cause, if you're just up there to, I don't know, get a paycheck or have some power, get laid, like whatever your thing is, that's not the thing you're supposed to be working on, I despise you for it. People like Joni Ernst couldn't care less about the Second Amendment. That goes for people like Marco Rubio, Dan Crenshaw. These people are full-blown gun control Republicans, 100%. And to me, they're dead to people like me.
Oh, someone give me a laugh on this. Come on, thank you.
I thought it was funny.
I worked hard on that.
I thought you were just
but that's how we all need to be.
I'll give you an applause, Aaron. That was good.
Well, there you go.
That was great.
No, Ben, I mean, you're 100% right. Nobody should take away, I think, the idea that the problem is Joni Ernst. that's at all. I mean, that's what we got going on. It's like you said, it's Marco, lead sponsor on Red Flags. You've got Lindsey Graham to $250,000 from Michael Bloomberg, for heaven's sakes. The GOP is rife with betrayal, and the only reason, look, it's not even just like the hyper moderates. Let's. I mean, look, I have spent more time working in Missouri and gun politics in the last 6 years than perhaps anybody, and I know there's not a single gun owner in Missouri who likes red flags, and I know everyone loves them now, but Josh Hawley was all about red flags back in the day, and Josh Hawley. What was that, Chris? It was the debates on this. That was 2020 or 2019. I think it was 2019. The federal debates over red flags in
that was
committee. And Josh Hawley stood right there, and he was like, the only questions he ever asked was, "Hey, what's the best version of language that we should adopt?" And Ted Cruz said the same stuff. What kind of language is the best version to accommodate all? Thank God, again, and strike me dead, but thank God for Joe Biden, because right now in 2021, when they had the same hearings this year, all those Republicans were tough guys, all of them. And so, sure, red flags is not going to pass in 2021, but the fact of the matter is that there is a tremendous, in my opinion, maybe you guys think I'm wrong, but a tremendous amount of Republicans who were sitting there saying, man, if the situation changes in some big way in 2022, I'll agree to some kind of a bad bill. I mean, God forbid there's some kind of a school shooting next year, a big one. I think you could easily see 6, 8, 10, 12 Republicans cross over, and it's an election year, so they're not going to come over for, in my opinion, on an AR-15 ban. But Violence Against Women Act, VAWA, which is chock full of gun control. It's got a great name. If you're a politician, they might do that.
Yeah.
I mean, well, when you recognize
background checks.
Right. Well, when you recognize that, the vast majority of these Republicans are like, you only had two choices, right? When they were running, they either had to say they were a Republican or they had to say they were a Democrat. And so they chose whichever party gave them the best chance of getting in there. And most of these people, again, don't bleed red, white, and blue like the rest of us. They just don't care. They ran for office for other reasons. And to think that the Republicans are just going to hold the line in 2022 out of the merits of the issue, or because the Second Amendment is worth preserving, or anything else like that, it's a joke, and it's not real. It's not based in reality anywhere. Yeah, big shooting like you were just talking about, Aaron, is a really good way to get a whole bunch of these people who already don't think and believe like us. They already don't believe like us. It's a pretty good way to get them on board to pass red flags or national gun registration, HR 8. And for anybody who's curious, Marco Rubio's red flag bill was S-292. You can look it up yourself.
Well, how many was it? Hold on now. The numbers get changed so fast. On HR 8, which is the universal gun registration, we had 11, 12 Republicans that passed that in the House. And then, so on the Senate side, we've already had 6, 8, 10, 12 Republicans talk about it in the past, being very vocal about it. But it wasn't just that. What was the other one this year? The big red flag bill that passed. HR 4350, the National Defense Authorization Act. You've got almost 100 Republicans that voted for that trash in the House. I remember talking to a congressman from Iowa. Won't mention his name, but there's only one congressman in Iowa.
Randy.
And I was like, Randy, this is like the day after the vote. We were on a family vacation over on a campground near Eldora, Iowa. And I took this call and I was like, I just got to ask you one question. I'm like, what the hell were you doing? And he's like, well, we're going to fix it in conference committee, which, all that all he was trying. Of course, he pretends as though I have no idea what a conference committee is, that it's going to pass the Senate, pass the House, different versions, and we'll agree to it on a conference committee. And so we can do it like this and we can do it better, next time. And I just remember thinking to myself, I just can't imagine a scenario where I run for office in probably the most conservative seat in the entire Midwest right now, congressional
America,
in Iowa or America. And then I feel that I have to go up to DC and vote for a red flag bill the first time so I can kill it the second time. And he's like, well, what would you had me do? And I was like, I'd have you do is go to the floor, get the damned microphone, stand up there and say, Madam Speaker, Lady of the Night Speaker, whatever you want to call her.
Oh,
wow.
Where's the noise effect on that? Come on, that
nasty.
And I'd have said, man,
I'm sorry.
Thank you. I'd been like, there's never been a scenario in the face of the earth where I'm going to vote for a red flag bill. But if you want to do it to our military and then have these men in office and women in office be removed from the military because of a red flag law, it'll be a cold day in hell before I ever vote for garbage like that. And he was like, oh, hey, you're right. That would have worked. And I don't know. I think your point, Ben, is correct. There's phonies, everywhere. And what happened in 2021 was a lot of gun owners, I think, treated everybody as potential frauds until they were proven to be the real deal. And that's how you've got, what was it, for constitutional carry, Iowa and Tennessee, and Texas, Utah, and Montana, right? That's what we got this year. All of a sudden in those states, they had to react to that pressure because gun owners just don't trust people. We shouldn't trust people.
I hate to say it. I mean, we're so close in Ohio too. We got constitutional carry votes in both chambers, just not the identical bills yet, so we can't get it to the governor. So it's going to have to be next year.
SAPA. I mean, you get the best SAPA bill in the country in Missouri this year. You've got all kinds of states pass other peripheral, gun bills because the gun owners in those states stopped trusting in these politicians. And they did not give them the benefit of the doubt. And that, to me, is the key for 2022 for gun owners, is to not trust anybody, certainly in DC, because these people they're all just, well, not all of them, but very many of them anyway, are just, man, if one bad thing happens in 2022, that's it. They're going to jump over. They're going to cross over party lines. And if they don't, it's only because they're afraid of the elections. And that's the whole point then. Keep that. That's what we want. We like fear. I want these people afraid.
We've seen this in Ohio. We saw this in Iowa, Missouri. We've seen this in Minnesota. This, to me, is the winning strategy. People are always like, what can we do? The government's so out of control. Politicians don't listen. What are we supposed to do? I make phone calls. They don't matter. I sign petitions, and I don't think they do any good. But the fact is, what we're talking about here has been working over and over and over and over again. We'll have to do another video sometime just about the bills we've stopped and passed in state legislatures.
Yeah.
These massive expansions of the Second Amendment, especially in the last 5 years, have been in states where we work with the best gun owners in America to pass the best bills. Now, again, the Biden surge has had some of these other red states pass pro-gun bills that, like Aaron said a few minutes ago, like he said, should have been done a long time ago. There's no excuse. There's no excuse to wait for Biden. But these are the tactics that have worked over and over and over and over again. And when we push way hard on our issues, relentlessly on the issues, when we beat on Democrats and Republicans, when we don't say, well, I live in a red district, I have a Republican state representative, so I don't need to call him. I know he's good on the Second Amendment. That is the number one way to screw yourself and the issue that you believe in and your state and your country. So if you're sitting there going, well, I've got a Republican congressman, or I live in a state that has Republican U.S. senators, those are the people who need to hear from you the most, the absolute most, so they know, my gosh, I can't just rely on gun owners, to vote for me, to give me money, to walk in my parades, because these guys are pissed off at me. That's what's making these people do the things that we want them to do. It's what's stopping gun control. It's what passes pro-gun legislation. And as far as I'm concerned, and I've seen this in Minnesota many times where I live, it's the only thing that works. Everything else is just playing games and letting time pass.
But I think that's what we've always laughed how there doesn't seem to be any tacticians in the Republican caucuses in state capitals or in DC. But if I'm a rank and file Republican right now, and this is, I think, the big encouragement for gun owners in 2022, it's just a whole different world now. Those guys, for so many years, state capitals, DC, the Paul Ryans, they could just go up there, just not do shit. And they could talk about their pro-gun, and they wouldn't do a damn thing, and then they get reelected. I think it's just a whole different appetite now. This is a new iteration of gun rights activists that we have all four of us been so proud to be a part of this resurgence in this love for freedom. I have never used the phrase deer hunting in my entire life, lobbying or in the Capitol or anything else. This is all about freedom. We're not hiding any of this. This is about stopping tyranny and what that actually means in real life. This is what what gun rights are all about. So I don't know. If I'm a Republican lawmaker sitting there, I'm T-minus not long until session begins. They got to earn that respect. It's an election year, and I like the fact that shift has taken place. That they cannot anymore just go up there and do nothing for years and expect that it's going to be okay. They're going to get lit on fire in their districts because gun organizations now play by different rules. Thank God for that.
The original
younger demographic
rules now.
The same rules that Thomas Jefferson and GW fought with, and I don't mean Bush.
The real GW, the OG G-dubs. Have you guys been seeing like a lower age demographic of people getting on board on this stuff? I know like Instagram's exploding. I've been hearing some of that stuff. Are there a lot of younger gun owners?
I talk to people about that all the time. In fact, I was talking to the Ohio State Senator about it. We were commiserating the education system and the ridiculous amount of spending that happens on each student in Ohio. And I said, well, you know what? Not all is lost. I said, because if the tyrannical left, if the evangelical left is what I like to call them now, if their goal, if in order to subjugate America is to destroy the mindset of freedom in the individual, well, the schools are drilling into these kids to be rebellious. There is no rules. There is no whatever. So when a tyrannical government tells them, no, sit down, shut up, now obey our rules, they're like, screw you. I've seen a ton of people, of millennials now that are growing up, having kids of their own. They're like, what? No, I don't want my kid to have all these gauges and studs and purple hair and weird freak looking stuff going on. I want them to be normal. I want them to grow up like I did in the 90s and late 80s. And I don't know. I see a lot of this stuff happening now, and I think it's a reason for encouragement amongst the gun rights community.
That's my whole point. Is people are excited now, and it's not just they don't trust politicians. I was talking to a lady in the bank, one of the gals that runs one of my accounts last week, and she's like, and she's like 32, and she's like, anymore. She's like, I don't trust my doctor. I don't trust the school board. I don't trust the CDC. I don't trust my state representative. I don't trust my pastor. She's like, I just don't trust anybody. She's like, it just seems like every institution in the country has let me down over the last year. She's like, I walk into the grocery store. I can't eat anything there anymore because none of it's healthy. She's like, I can't take any of the advice on how to deal with national health, problems because they're all pushing an agenda. And she's like, I used to not think this way. She's like, in fact, a year or two ago, I didn't think like this. And she's like, these people have driven me to the point of rage. And I was like, welcome to the fight, baby, because that's exactly what's happening now all across the first time. Yeah. But that to me is like what's going to save this country. And because again, not harping on people only due to their age, but it's the over trusting, mentality of this lady's grandpa, for example, presumably. I mean, I don't know her, but just in general, they would never distrust the media. They would never distrust what they see on TV at night, but their granddaughter does. And now she's woke in a good sense of the word. She's woke to freedom.
I think what happened was like back in the day that people, I mean, you remember what was his name? Dave something, Captain 11 on the Sioux Falls, South Dakota. Yeah. I mean, you remember him. That guy was a trustworthy guy. When he got up there to deliver the news, he wasn't cramming some agenda or bias down people's throats. He was there to be Captain 11 or whatever his name was. And Dave Diedrich.
Yep.
Okay. But somewhere along the way, that started to change. The media became corporate owned, a special interest group. And these people didn't quite understand that the old way, all that stuff is gone now. And you marry that up with all these public schools cranking out like mindless garbage as far as like their curriculums and stuff like that. And the entire world changed and they didn't even see it. And they thought to themselves, oh, well, it's just how much different can it be than old Dave? It's a lot different than old Dave. The Daves of today are the Chris Cuomos. And these people, they don't have an interest in journalism anymore. They are a total political special interest group with an agenda for themselves and for the left. And that's just something. And a lot of people today, my age, younger, and even older than me, they understand this. That this isn't the same world we grew up in. Right. And I think we should be hopeful.
Yeah, Chris, you and I had a meeting with some people yesterday, great people. And remember that one gal who was there? She went to some nice prestigious school. I won't say which one. And she said, because we were talking like we're talking now, right? And you couldn't really tell if she agreed with us or what. But she said, I used to be pretty liberal. I used to not think like this, but I went to this school over here and it turned me in. They pushed leftism down my throat so hard that it made me into a right winger.
Yeah.
And so that's it's actually a good place to be.
The laws of unintended consequences.
Right, the polarity of it all, you become more of what you are, right? If everything is moderate, you're neither here nor there. You're always riding the fence, right? You're never quite a leftist, never quite on the right, never a Republican, never a Democrat, but when the left is insane and the right is going hell yeah to freedom over here, with gun owners and everybody else, well, then people become more of what they kind of, want to be. So that gal, she had a little bit of a liberal bent to her, but the extreme leftism showed her to herself that no, I'm not that. I'm not that. I'm way more like this, even if I have some slight liberal tendencies. And that's a good thing. Forcing people to be on the left or the right to say, I believe this or I believe that. I think it's a fantastic thing.
I've always thought that the Bible was right when it says, let your yes be yes and your no be no. And for people to just not declare on those things is not a good thing. But it turns out that when you have a total leftist machine saying, follow the science, but we can't look inside our own pants and figure out what a boy is and what a girl is, it's forcing these people to say, you know what? I didn't think I was, but I'm with those people over there on the right. That's common sense. That's freedom. That's America. That's the family. Those are good and proper things. I'm with that. I'm not with this garbage over here anymore. Anytime somebody makes that decision, that's a win. It's a win because not only do they change, but then there's a high likelihood that their kids will change. Their kids will be raised correctly.
Careful to make sure they raise their kids.
Grows and grows and grows.
Yep.
So
I'd be curious to know her parents' stance. This lady you were talking with yesterday. Were her parents conservative or were they liberal as well? I want to know if this was something that was probably not.
We have no idea.
You have no clue. It'd be interesting to know if this was a seed that was planted when she was really young that got buried over through high school. And somehow it came back to fruition through the leftist school when they were pushing it on her that she was like this wake up, back up, because it's obviously very important. What you're teaching your kids in their early years is what you pray that they remember in their older years. And it's just, I think that's another thing that's very different about what we do is not for us today. It is, but it's not. It's for the generations. I think it's very selfish people in any of the state capitol buildings or state houses. It's what's good for me today. I want what's good for me today. I want this to benefit me now. I want this, whatever it is. But no, we're very different. It's I want this for me, but I want this for my son and his siblings someday and my nieces and nephews. It's a longer mentality that they just don't seem to have because, well, they hate kids. We could talk about that in a different video or in this video, but it's a long-standing tradition that we have inherited of freedom and a love for freedom that we want and are desperately trying to pass on to the next generation, and not just to my son. And I'm sorry, I'm way behind you guys. We're on it. We've been praying for this little boy. We have him. Let's add it up real quick here. I can never remember how many boys you all have, but there's 4 of us sitting here. But how many more times has our name multiplied just in the group of us 4? And by there's more Door brothers than the 4 of us here. But Ben has 3. Do you know if the next one's a boy?
Don't know if it's a boy or a girl yet.
Okay, so that's
find out in a
3,
month.
4. Chris?
3.
So now we're at 7. Aaron? Oh, we lost Aaron's audio.
We lost Aaron's audio.
Nah, I was on mute. That's all. So it depends on the day how many boys I want to claim. But this morning I claimed all 4 of them. So.
4, 3, 7, 10, 11. It's 11 of us. It's almost 3 times as many freedom fighters. I use that term, politically speaking.
That's before you met my daughters.
Not to mention them and their sons someday. But no, I think for anyone that's watching this, just realizes we're doing this for you today, but for your kids and your grandkids and your great grandkids, and we won't stop doing it for that.
That's so true. I'm pretty selfish. I'm doing it for my kids. Yeah, it's this is important. I think, and going into 2022 now, we're coming up on elections here. As we know, elections have consequences.
As Obama told us.
Well, I think 2022 is going to be very different than we saw in 2021. In 2021, we had all these gun control bills right out of the gate. We had HR 127, HR 125, 121, all these different gun control bills that got launched right away. There was a huge push. Gun owners hammered back, and everything has kind of stalled a bit here at the close of 2021. I personally think it'll be a big mistake to think that 2022 is a shoe-in. Like, we're good. Like, we stopped it this year.
A great point.
It's gonna be done next year. There's nothing we can, there's nothing we need to worry about. If they couldn't do it then, they couldn't do it now. That's not true at all. I think that the Democrats know they're gonna get their butts handed to them hardcore. And so what are they gonna do? Well, we saw this in a snapshot not long ago. We saw this in Virginia. Virginia, they knew they were going to lose the elections. So what did they do? The Democrats passed Republicans voted for it too. Even with Democrats having all the power, Republicans still voted for gun control. But they passed, Aaron, I don't even remember. They passed 5 or 6 different gun control bills.
Red flag gun seizures, universal background checks, 1 gun a month, local gun control in violation of state preemption law. The only thing they stopped was the assault weapons ban in Virginia. So it was the kitchen sink in Virginia in 2019.
Right. Yeah. So they passed it all, and now they have a Republican governor. Or they will, pretty soon. And the Republican governor is already saying he's not going to repeal any of the gun control. But now it's just a matter of time again before, voters get complacent, the apathy sets in, and Virginia will someday down the road.
Well, and that's not the voters getting complacent or apathy happening when the Republicans get elected, because the gun owners got pissed off because of what the Democrats did on the gun control stuff. When the Republicans take it back and then they don't go and instantly repeal that stuff, that's not apathy. That's just, go screw yourself if you're not going to fight for me and do what you said you were going to do.
Right.
So that's political payback and well-deserved.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that at all. Virginia will flip back and get a Democrat governor at some point in the future, and the Democrats know it. So what are they going to do in 2022? If they're almost destined to lose the House, maybe the Senate too, both chambers, what are they going to do? Sit here and try to placate the right by not trying to pass any gun control in 2022? No. The left is going to do what the left has done in every state we work in for longer than a decade. I think they're going to do exactly what they did in Virginia, and I think Joe Biden and House and Senate Democrats are going to go full bore ahead with gun control in 2022, because at least if they're going to lose a chamber or two, at least they got their gun control bills passed first. And someday down the road, Democrats will take back those chambers, and they can do more, and they can do more, and they can do more. So in my opinion, I think what 2022 was just the first salvo. It was just the first line of gun control bills.
Looking for low-hanging fruit. They wanted the low-hanging fruit that 2021 may have given them, and gun owners stopped that. But I don't even think it's your opinion, Ben. It's just a reality. They willingly and knowingly destroyed their control of Congress to pass Obamacare in 2010. They knew at the beginning, if we do this, we will lose control of Congress, and they did not care. Same thing happened in 94 on the Clinton assault weapons ban. They knew that if we try to ban the sale of AR-15s, we will cost ourselves control of Congress. They did it anyway. So they think much longer term than conservatives do. They always have. And you're 100% right. It's going to be, it might be a different style of gun control bill they push in 2022, but the fervor to pass it will be like the Joni Ernst VAWA bill. Maybe it's not a straight up AR-15 ban, but boy, by God, if they could make misdemeanors grounds for being prohibited, which is in that bill, that would affect millions and millions and millions of Americans who can own guns right now. And if they can deputize local law enforcement and federalize local prosecutors, that would be sensational accomplishment for them prosecuting gun owners. And what was the other big thing there? The NICS checks. If they can mandate a criminal investigation every time a gunner fails a NICS check, which has got a 94%, we said, Chris?
Higher.
94% fail rate on a false positive rate
yeah.
on a NICS failure. If they can send a cop out to every gun owner's door and initiate a criminal investigation every single time. I mean, if that kind of bill passed in 2022, Democrats would be sensationally proud of themselves, willing to lose control of Congress, and especially having Republicans on the bill as joint sponsors. So it's going to be all hands on deck in 2022. We have to watch out for these betrayals from the right middle. Let's not give them too much credit. The middle, the mushy middle. And then, of course, a full-on attack on the left. They had no problem losing control of Congress for Obamacare or the AW Band 94. They'll do it again if they can in 2022 for sure.
Yep.
So we got to do exactly what happened in 2021. Got to stop everything that happens in 2022 and use this momentum to finish passing constitutional carry in Ohio, and many other states. Keep advancing. This is a great opportunity to stop everything if we can and continue to pass pro-gun bills all across the country. And that happens again because Biden's in the White House doesn't mean we can pass, constitutional carry in California. That's not what we're talking about. I think this is the precise time when Democrats like Biden are in charge to put pressure on your Republican state legislatures, your Republican governors, to pass the pro-gun bills. Don't just yell about Democrats, yell at the Republicans, because they're already feeling all of the pressure from having Democrats in charge. If gun owners start poking them in the ribs like this because they passed the bills in 2022, that is like the number one way to actually get the pro-gun bills passed that you want in many, many states across the country. So to me, that's just the number one thing that needs to happen going forward to have big success in 2022. If we can stop everything and pass a whole, make 5 more states into constitutional carry states, pass stand your ground in Wisconsin and other places, that would be fantastic, I think. It'd be a big win. And then we can strip away everything from Biden in the 2022 elections, or at least all of his legislative power. So, guys, I think we're going to call it quits at that. We're about an hour into this podcast. Thank you all for joining us today. We'll be back with more updates, more information. Have a fantastic new year as we roll in, and let's make 2022 a hell of a lot better than 2020 and 2021 were. We'll catch you later.